President Cyril Ramaphosa will tomorrow travel to Eswatini to attend the 8th Southern Africa Customs Union Heads of State and Government Summit. He'll be accompanied by a delegation, which includes South African Revenue Service Commissioner Edward Kieswetter, who recently took on a new role as the chairperson of the World Customs Organization. Now, the WCO has 185 members, 3/4 of which are developing countries, and it is the only intergovernmental organization that's exclusively focused on customs matters and is recognized as the voice of the global customs community. So former SARS Commissioner Pravin Gordan was the first SARS Commissioner to hold the position, and that was between 2001 and 2006. And it is now the turn, of course, of our SARS Commissioner, who's in that position right now, Edward Kieswetter. Wonderful to have you, Commissioner. Thanks so much for being with us here on the program.
Good morning, Dan. As always, nice to be on the program with you.
Indeed, and congratulations on your new position. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about it, what it entails, and what it is that the World Customs Organization actually does.
Well, as you pointed out, Leanne, it's consists of 185 member countries, and the headquartered in Brussels is an organization, the WCO Secretariat, consisting of about 200, just more than 200 full-time staff. The purpose of the WCO is to act in the interest of members in terms of setting international standards and policies, in terms of facilitating collaboration, and also help to build capacity and capability. The WCO chair is elected by the 185 members to play the oversight and leadership role for the entire global community of customs officers, and of course also to give direction and leadership to the Secretariat based in Brussels. This is an important recognition of the role and the influence and also the reputation that has been restored, and why SARS and its current leadership was considered to be capable and suitable for playing this leadership role.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. I mean, as I mentioned again in the introduction, it's not the first time that one of our SARS commissioners, and we talk about our former SARS Commissioner Pravin Gordan, held that position between 2001 and 2006. I imagine this is quite a big indication that the SARS position has a lot of credibility, and this has been something, I suppose, that's been plagued during the years of state capture, but to once again find ourselves in a position like this, I imagine is a good vote of thanks and a big vote of confidence, I should say, in the position.
It is indeed. And as I said, the position of chair and secretary general are elected by the member countries, and therefore it is an expression and a vote of confidence. For us, if we think about where we were 5 years ago, and SARS would not have been acknowledged as being in a position that is credible enough, and its leadership would not have been considered to play such a defining role. So it is indeed for us another testament of the rebuilding and the recovery of SARS from the horrible years of state capture. I think it's also a testament to South Africa. I must tell you, it was a proud moment for me when I stood there and they hoisted the South African flag, which will be in position during the term of the chairmanship. And that was a proud moment for South Africa to be recognized on the international stage again.
Yeah, it is always nice when you sort of see that recognition. And I know that it's, something that's slow and something that it takes a while for us to get that back, but it's wonderful to get some positive stories coming through. Now, tomorrow, quite a big day, because this is where you're actually going to be accompanying President Ramaphosa, and this is to the 8th Southern Africa Customs Union Heads of State and Government Summit that's being held in Eswatini. It's very, very important, you take on this position as well, particularly when we see illicit trade, money laundering. The cigarette trade as it stands. We saw reports coming out that the government loses 20 billion rand on illicit cigarette trade. All of these kind of things that are losing the country a lot of money. Now, I imagine that these are the kind of issues that are going to be addressed at this summit.
It is absolutely the case, and I think very often the public thinks of customs as as SARS as only collecting tax, but our customs function is actually significantly more than simply collecting tax. It is about preserving and protecting the integrity of our domestic market by ensuring that the goods that are facilitated across our borders are in fact legitimate, they are correctly declared, they are legitimate in terms of the value chain and the logistics cycle. And unfortunately, we say that a customs risk anywhere is a customs risk everywhere. And therefore, our relationship with our fellow customs union, SACU is the oldest customs union in the world, by the way. And the countries that form part of that union, just for the public to know, is South Africa, which is obviously the largest member. Then we have Namibia, Botswana, Lesotho, and Eswatini. And it is important that within this union, there is integrity between us, there is adequate exchange of information, so that we work together and become aware of the risk. Customs risk, and as you pointed out, the risk of illegitimate trade, we see that in the tobacco industry, in the alcohol industry, in the fuel industry, in the clothing industry. Every one of these sectors is riddled with the scourge of criminal syndicated activities. And it's therefore important for us as a union, and also, if I can just zoom out and also mention that we also now are part of the Africa Free Continental Agreement, which also means that there is a lot more the facilitation of trade between the borders of southern African countries is very, very important. And so what we're working on as part of our modernization plan is working together with our neighboring countries to strengthen the system on which we exchange information, whilst at the same time making the passage of goods and services across our border safer. Any time delay between borders adds cost to the economy, and we're constantly trying to manage this balance between an efficient facilitation of goods across our borders whilst managing the risk that some of those goods may have. And it also speaks to the important role of data and artificial intelligence to help us identify risks so that we don't stop every traveler, we don't stop every cargo, but we can target those customs cargoes and travelers that indeed present us with a risk.
Yeah, and when we look at the risks, because there are many risks that are associated. I mean, customs is a very complicated sector, and I mean, as you say, a lot of people sort of see maybe one aspect of it, but there's so much. I mean, we even saw a news flash coming through yesterday where it was basically saying that the mining sector, they're reporting mounting customs backlogs as SARS battles technical issues. So I want to talk about the technical issues, but I also want to talk about these customs backlogs, and this is here within our country, and that is posing a very big problem to a lot of sectors where they're keeping on waiting and waiting and waiting, and these backlogs are causing a lot of issues. Perhaps you want to just talk to us about that, and then I want to also touch on this software that the mining sector are talking about.
Let me deal with that in a number of ways. First, talk about the infrastructure at our borders. Our borders require significant infrastructure investment. If you go to our busiest border ports, such as Beitbridge or Lubombo, these have not been upgraded significantly for many, many years. And so one of the things that within the South African Interministerial Committee that looks at border management, we are formulating a business case to upgrade just the physical infrastructure. Secondly, as I said to you earlier on, South Africa Customs work with the Border Management Agency, with Home Affairs, with the police. So it's a multi-agency facilitation. And whenever you have more than one government department, there's clearly also challenges of collaboration and cooperation within us, which is why the need to exchange information also within government departments and across government departments is as important as sharing it between two countries. Specifically, customs works on what we call a pre-clearance system, which means clearing agents or importers or exporters have to log the declarations or the manifest of what they want to take out. SARS will pre-clear that and send them a message to indicate to them that they are clear to advance to the port, because from a customs perspective, they have been cleared to cross the port. The specific issue that the mining sector has raised is we have had in the last week some unfortunate interruption between the messaging system and therefore the backlog resulted from traders or exporters not knowing that they can advance to the border. We have worked on that. Also, of course, depending on our service providers. As of this morning, I can give the assurance that that particular glitch has been substantively repaired. The backlogs are being cleared, and we're expecting that the speed across our borders would be regularized. Yeah. Obviously, the core systems for pre-clearance and advanced passage still works, which means that even though customs, or rather importers or exporters, do not receive the messaging, it's an SMS messaging system, they still can advance to the border, and we will clear them like we did in the old days manually. We become so dependent on technology that when it doesn't work, we think everything else stops. Yeah. But I also want to give assurance to the public. It may take a little longer if it's manual, but they won't be prevented from crossing the ports.
So everything has been sorted, because it was this was reported, I think it was last week, the middle of last week or so. So are you saying things are now, they're now being processed and things are moving? Because that was a big frustration from a lot of industries that are saying there was absolutely nothing being processed because of this glitch in the software.
Yes, so there are two systems that work in tandem. The one is the declaration processing system, and that works perfectly as designed. And then secondly, there is the cargo manifest processing system, which then should receive the message from the declaration processing system that they are free to advance to the ports. The messaging system in between is what played up, and that has been addressed.
Okay.
And obviously, over the next few days, we will fine-tune it to calibrate it. But I'm informed by our technology teams that it's substantively cleared, and we expect that once the backlog has been cleared, that we will return to the normal pre-clearance system as our clearing agents and exporters have come to appreciate.
Commissioner, before I let you go, obviously we've got to start wrapping up, but of course this year's tax season begins on the 7th of July, so very exciting times ahead of us. I say that tongue-in-cheek, but a necessary evil. What are your revenue targets this year in terms of the number of taxpayers that will be submitting their tax returns?
So we have well over 8 million taxpayers who are required to file. And the good news is that for more than half of them, we will include them in what we call the auto-assessment functionality. And next week will be a big week for many of these taxpayers. If our predictions are correct, then about 90% of just over 4 million taxpayers will receive an assessment outcome from us, which means they have to do nothing. From the 30th of June to the 7th of July, they should not call us, they should not come to our offices. They will get an SMS from us to tell them their assessment is ready. When they go onto their Mobi app or the e-filing application, they will receive the assessment outcome. If they agree to the outcome, they simply close the app, and the refund, if there is a refund due, will be in their account in 72 hours.
Okay.
And that's really part of the work we're using artificial intelligence to provide that service. And so next week, about 4 million taxpayers should have a smile on their face. Then from the 7th of July, taxpayers who choose to either file as they would normally do on our e-filing, or those who still, although we discourage it, come to our branches, may come from the 10th of July. But from the 7th of July, midnight, our system will be open to receive electronic filing. And that means that those who choose to file will be able to submit their declarations to us, and if required, additional documentation. And again, for many of those taxpayers, they will receive their assessment within under 5 seconds. If they're not selected for refund for verification, they will receive their refunds within under 72 hours. If they are selected, SARS will engage with them to say, what else is missing? What else do we need to verify?
Yeah.
And in the exceptional cases, some may be chosen or selected for a more detailed audit. So we do encourage taxpayers to make sure the information they give us is truthful, it is accurate, and that they don't highlight themselves as a risk to SARS, because that will then put them in a slow lane.
All right. Good luck. Good luck. And again, congratulations on the new position. And we wish you well on your trip that you're embarking tomorrow with, of course, the president to Eswatini. That would, of course, Edward Kieswetter, the commissioner of the SARS and the newly appointed chairperson of the World Customs Organization, talking to us about that 8th Southern Africa Customs Union Heads of State and Government Summit that will be held in Eswatini from tomorrow. And, of course, this 2023 tax season that will be kicking off.